So unfortunately, Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals was not a particularly entertaining game. Obviously, this one had a lot on the line for both teams. You know, obviously there's the going to the finals thing, but also in the case of Miami, yeah, getting to the finals was the priority, but also avoiding the utter embarrassment and devastating place it would put you in NBA history to blow a 3-0 lead. So the Heat both escaped elimination and escaped supreme embarrassment. Hello everybody, welcome to Us Rusty Buckets. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second. It makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. In this game, Jimmy Butler was better than he has been in the past few games, but I would not say good. I would say this was a poor Jimmy game, but he at least looked alive and looked like he was making an effort. He got 10 field goal attempts in game 6. He got 27 today. That 27 resulted in 28 points. It's better than nothing. Ultimately, the fact that he was so aggressive did help Miami's offense. But obviously, the real star of the show here was Caleb Martin. I left to record after like the minute was left in the fourth, and I'm curious. It's probably been announced by now. I'm not sure who between Caleb and Jimmy is actually going to win this Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Okay, Jimmy won it. I'm not surprised by that, but I do believe there was a very strong case for Caleb Martin. To be fair for Miami, Jimmy was a big contributor in 3 of their wins, and he was fine in this one. Again, like I said, not the best, but to the bad standard he's been putting up lately, it seemed pretty good. I probably would have given it to Caleb. I'm not gonna lie, because he has been so big for them for so many big moments in this series. And of course, in this game 7, he got, what was it, 26 points, 10 rebounds. He played 45 minutes, played more than Jimmy actually did, and went 11 for 16. He got 2 less points than Jimmy, but he did it on 12 less shots. 4 for 6 from outside. He was also hitting like difficult mid-range shots. One of them where he fumbled the ball baseline. Some argued he double dribbled. I didn't really look at a replay, so maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But either way, hit a tough baseline fadeaway. Pump faked on the 3-point line. Defender jumped and took a step in. That was a contested mid-range shot. He hit a fadeaway at like the free throw line early in the first quarter. Just an electric performance from Caleb Martin. He was so good, cannot point it out enough. Like, I've been talking about how good he's been in these playoffs, but for the most part, it's been in the context of a role player ultimately. Like, don't get me wrong, he was creating his shot a decent amount, but it wasn't like a thing that Miami was actively searching for. And at a certain point in this game, Miami was trying to feed Caleb Martin. Rather than him just hitting the open shots when he gets to him, now the offense is running through him, and I hope I don't have to explain the massive leap that is. Bam Adebayo was really frustrating in this one offensively speaking, but he did get a near triple-double and was amazing defensively in this one. Miami in general was amazing defensively in this one. I'm pretty sure 84 would be the lowest amount of points scored from either team throughout this whole series. I'm pretty sure that's correct, but 84 points for Boston, that's fantastic. Outside of that, Duncan Robinson, I just want to give him credit as well, because he was out of the rotation going into this year's playoffs, and eventually they realized they needed that spark shooting wise. But what helped with Duncan was not only was he bringing that 3-point shooting, but he also has been really effective at like backdoor cuts and stuff like that, a couple of straight line drives even. But he's found ways to score the ball and to be a threat offensively outside of just a catch and shoot. So that was huge. Gabe Vincent had a decent contribution. Kyle Lowry hit a really difficult mid-range shot early in the fourth quarter that to me was like the signal that the game was like over. Yeah, for Miami, they definitely came to play. They played as though severe embarrassment was on the line. And there was stretches of this game, I mean, with Caleb hitting the shots that he was, Kyle Lowry hitting the ridiculous shot that he did. It just felt like in a certain stretch of this fourth quarter, especially early on, that Miami just could not miss. Now, let's talk about what went wrong for Boston. Now, Jason Tatum played on a rolled ankle, so I'm not going to be too harsh on him. I did change my stance on that superstar take, and I'm not just going to back away from the change of that stance because I still agree with what I said most recently and not in the past. But if I was going to be a hater, this would be a good time to do it. Jaylen Brown, though, is who I will be a hater for because now is a perfect time to do it. He had 8 turnovers and 5 fouls, and he shot the ball 23 times to score 19 points. He was bad. B-A-D in all caps. Bad, terrible. This is an all-NBA performer, mind you. And this is something I've talked about before, but just the standards that we hold Jason Tatum to versus Jaylen Brown, and yet people have the audacity to compare these two. Yeah, Jason didn't have a good game either, but he had an excuse. Jaylen was perfectly healthy and poised in a position to be the aggressive player, given that Jason was a little debilitated. But sure, he was more aggressive, but it ultimately just resulted in multiple turnovers. And I can't tell you how many of those fucking turnovers weren't even like passes. Like he either lost the ball and it went out of bounds dribbling, or someone stole it from him. He can't dribble. He just can't freaking dribble. And that ultimately was the huge detriment to Boston's offense, because I think when it came to hitting shots, they could have been worse. Like, yeah, they were at 40% from the field. 21% from 3 on 40 attempts is really rough. But in general, the splits were like splits that you could technically win a playoff game in. Sometimes you get these games where teams are just shooting horribly. Miami shot excellently offensively, which did not help. But all of those turnovers, it just felt like Miami got, where is it? I would have thought it was more. It really felt like there was a bigger difference in field goal attempts. But either way, I was just building up to a point that ended up being mutt. Is that even how you say that phrase? Mutt? I don't know. But yeah, that was a huge hindrance for Boston. But then again, obviously the fact that they shot 20% from 3 on 40 attempts that's rough, man. Derek White had his moments in this game, but he also had moments where, because he had a moment before, he tried to have a moment again and it was forced and it didn't work out. A couple of pull-up three-pointers, and I'm like, all right, Derek White, I don't know about that one, buddy. But again, to be fair, there were limited options out there. Jaylen was terrible, and Jason was terrible, but at least for somewhat of a good reason. And another thing that's probably worthy of note is Marcus Smart had 20 points in games 5 and 6. I think he had 22 in game 5, and hit a lot of really big shots on that one. He had 9 points on 4 for 10 shooting in this one, and honestly, losing that contribution was probably rather significant. So yeah, Miami pretty much mopped the floor with them. It felt like they had control of this game for a majority of it. I will say there were stretches in the third quarter where they got it down to like 7, I think even 6 at one point, but it felt like, as you know, this tends to happen, but it felt like Boston would chip away at the lead and get it to like somewhere in that like 7 to 10 point range, and then Miami would just hit a 3-pointer. Even Jimmy hit a couple of big momentum changing 3-pointers in this one. Yeah, it just seemed like every single time Boston was poised to make a run, Miami matched it. And I think they had the lead for this entire game. No, I think Boston started off with a 3-pointer. No, that's right. But yeah, I think it was like 9-6 midway through the first quarter, and even later than that, because the first quarter was ugly basketball. Neither of these teams could buy a bucket. And both teams were locking each other up. Boston's defense became less impactful as the games went along, and especially got to the point in the fourth quarter where it seemed like they just stopped caring. There's only so many times I can excuse you getting backdoored by Duncan Robinson, even if I am going to give him praise. But yeah, that's my initial reaction. I don't think there's too much else to say, but I'll probably kick myself for forgetting something because it's a Game 7. But yeah, if you want to check out my finals preview, that's uploaded over on my main channel. I dropped it as soon as the game ended. But I mean, spoiler alert, the Denver is probably going to win, more likely than not. Like, if I'm a betting man, I'm putting all my money on that. But you know, you can at least learn how Denver's going to beat Miami. But yeah, that is it. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.